If you can be the most expensive MSP in your area, then you make more profit for the same amount of work. Which is beautiful when you hear it said like that, but I know that there are all sorts of psychological and emotional reasons that MSPs don't put up their prices. The same reasons that stop you being the most expensive in your marketplace. My special guest today is an expert at pricing and positioning, and he's going to tell you right now how you can name your price.
Hi, I'm Justin Neale. I'm the founder of the Value Alchemists.
And thanks so much for joining me on the podcast, Justin. We met a few months ago, I seem to remember, at the Managed Services Summit, which is a show here in London in the UK. And there were 3 or 4 speakers in a row, and you were on stage, and then there was another speaker, and then I was on stage, and we got to talk backstage a little bit, just sort of in between, and we were comparing notes. And I loved what you had to say about value. And I think, all of the MSPs listening to this on the podcast or watching this on YouTube are going to love what you have to say as well. So before we jump into demonstrating value and why MSPs are so bad at demonstrating value and therefore so bad at sort of collecting the extra money that you get from demonstrating huge value. Let's first of all just dive back into your career, because you've come out of a big, long corporate career in the last few years.
That's right. So I was in the IT, specifically the aviation space for 25 years, last with Airbus Group, and supporting all of the airlines around the world with their software solutions. But a big piece of that, and one of my roles, was we did the kind of the revenue management and the pricing for the airlines, which was how I really got started looking at the psychology behind pricing and that kind of fascinating world of, kind of how much will people pay for something. And it can be wildly different depending on the situation. And so when I left corporate life, I kind of thought, well, what problem can I help other businesses solve? And pricing was one of them.
That's so interesting. So that's just opened a whole new area of knowledge in my head. So it had never occurred to me that the manufacturers of the planes would actually help the airlines with pricing. So in terms of that kind of assistance, is it a case of, right, you've got your standard Airbus A360, whatever the model is, and you could get 400 seats in, or you could get 380 in, and obviously that has impacts on fuel and impacts on revenue and stuff like that. Was it that kind of modeling, or was it a much more simplistic pricing advice?
So that software product was in another aviation company, but on the Airbus side of things, the airlines themselves will sort of look for ways to differentiate and ways that they can sort of look different to their competitors and make it very difficult to be compared on price. And you'll only really see that when you start to try to find a flight and you've got competitive airlines that you could choose from. But equally, the moment you choose, which cabin class you choose, the ancillaries, there are thousands of permutations for essentially the same thing that is going to take you from A to B. And yet the price point can go from £25 on a cheap economy ticket to thousands of pounds for a first class ticket for essentially the same thing.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and I think airline pricing has. I mean, it's almost an obsession, isn't it, for people who like to travel? Here in the UK, we have 2 budget airlines that are in competition with each other, and anybody in the UK or who has travelled into the UK or through Europe using either EasyJet or Ryanair, which are the 2 sort of big budget airlines here, will know that an EasyJet is it's cheap, and I don't mind cutting corners and having to carry my bag on and not have any coffee and all of that stuff. And then you've got Ryanair, which essentially offers exactly the same service, but there's something about it that seems cheaper. Cheaper in that people will choose it because it seems to be a cheaper way to fly, but you also feel that they care less. I'm sure I've read something somewhere that Ryanair was threatening to charge its customers to use the toilet on the plane. I'm sure that's not legal. So is that, when you talk about airlines differentiating themselves in anything other than price, that kind of positioning in my mind, because that may not be the position that everyone has of those particular airlines, but is that the kind of thing that you're talking about?
Yes, absolutely. And when you look at airlines differentiating on cabin classes, for example, but it's not just that. It is things like priority boarding, giving you the fast track security. But then, if you've got fast track security, you've then got more time in the airport. So then you want lounge access. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit like going to get a hire car. When you go to the car rental desk, yes, you get the car rental for $15 a day, but by the time you've left, you're paying $100 a day because you've got the tire protection, you bought a tank of fuel, you've got the enhanced insurance, and you might drop it off at a different airport or have late check-in.
Yeah.
There's no end of the ways, but they're always selling you things that you want at that point in time, and they're giving you that core service initially. But then it's very easy for them to upsell everything else because actually they're solving the next problem for you, and it's a step along the way. And I think this is where there are a lot of those models which I've seen in that aviation space, which apply brilliantly across other industries. It's just that pricing maturity maybe isn't just there yet.
Yeah, that's really interesting. The example you just gave there of the car hire is right at the beginning of Alex Hormozzi's newish book, which is called $100 Million Money Models, which I don't know if you've read, Justin.
I've not read that one yet. I need to. That's on my list.
It is going to explode your head because everything Alex Hormozzi does is fantastic. And I think he's written a book that's right in your world. So you should. He was selling bundles of 200 of those per person. So have a look on eBay. There's bound to be some cheap ones on eBay, which is interesting.
I've read his first couple, but not that one yet.
Oh, if you love those, you'll definitely love this. So let's take this pricing and value idea and then transfer this over to MSPs, because it would be very easy as an MSP owner to listen to this and say, well, yes, you rent a basic car and then they upgrade you to a better model and they upgrade you to the insurance and they upgrade you to would you like us to fill it with petrol or gas for you? And you can again see with the airlines that I'm happy to pay extra for priority service and express check-in and more legroom and all of that stuff. But when you apply that in a B2B sense and you look at that from an MSP's point of view, where are the upsells there? Where is the applicable opportunity to add value and bump the price up?
So the majority of MSPs look like they do essentially the same thing as one another. And so you do end up with a lot of MSPs competing purely on price because it's very hard for one of their clients to really, or potential clients, to understand what's different. And so where it really comes into play is when you start to really look at niching down and thinking about, what problem do I want to solve, but more importantly, for who? So if we take the case of veterinary practices, for example, so, everyone, lots of people have pets, especially post-COVID. Everyone seemed to get a dog. But veterinary practices have their own specific software they use, their own specific kind of ways of working, their own specific challenges. Now, let's say you're an MSP and one of your niches is veterinary practices. Actually, your knowledge and understanding of the tools they're using, their operational constraints, how important it is that if that system goes down or their access to that system, they can't check in any patients. They can't quote any work. They can't do anything. And speaking their language, understanding their problems, and being able to tailor your service very specifically to their requirements means that the conversation isn't about price anymore. So they can't really compare you to anyone else anymore because no one is speaking that same language. And if you can solve a problem for them, then you can charge a significant premium for it.
Now, I believe that many MSPs will perceive that all MSPs are already doing this because they are naturally problem solvers. But in your experience, do you find that that's not the case, that actually a lot of MSPs know that they can solve problems, but they don't actually have that conversation with the clients?
Yeah, I think, and also they're trying to go too thin and too wide. So they don't want to limit themselves. So they tend to sort of offer their services to almost anyone. But that makes it a little bit like trying to, the example I think I used on stage was bottled water. If you said, I'm going to go into the bottled water market, most you wouldn't get any investment. No backer's going to, say to you, that's a great idea. It's an underserved market, because you can go into any grocery store and you can buy bottled water for a few cents. And yet back in 2017, Mike Cesario kind of, created this amazing brand concept of Liquid Death, which is just canned water. But what he did was he could see that there was an underserved part of the market, people who didn't want to turn up at a party. They weren't drinking beer. They wanted something, though, that represented, a bit of a cooler image. And, a bottle of Evian wasn't really going to cut it. So he created this great concept. People love the concept. So he actually made the product. And he's able to sell canned water at the same price as beer. And, for me, that's a fantastic example of, if you solve a problem, people will pay a premium. And in this case, he's charging 10 times the price that you could buy just a basic bottled water for, but it's exactly the same product. There
Yeah.
is nothing different apart from the packaging and how it's positioned.
So I suppose, would the MSP equivalent of that be something like 24/7 support? So you can say to a business owner or a business executive, look, we've got our base support hours. It might be 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. But we know that you work. We know you work evenings. We know you work weekends. And we never want you sat in front of a computer that is giving you trouble and you can't reach out for help. So we can offer you 24/7 support. It's a bolt-on or it's part of the service or whatever is the case. And obviously that gets offshored or wherever you get the extra help desk service from. But would you say that that's the equivalent, where you're still essentially selling the same as someone else, but because you're looking at it from the customer's point of view and you're looking at what their potential problems are, and you can see them thinking, oh yeah, actually, if I'm up finishing a presentation at 9 p.m. on Sunday night and I can't print, I want to be able to get that sorted on Sunday night and not have to wait till Monday morning. Is that the kind of the MSP equivalent of that?
I would go even deeper.
Okay.
I would say that it's actually about getting really under the skin of the customer. So one of the MSP clients I works with car dealerships. So dealerships have dealership management systems, so centralized software systems, but understanding how those work, the connectivity, making sure that they're accessible all of the time, especially at weekends when there's a lot of footfall into the showrooms, but also how you price your service to those customers. Because within a dealership, you've got people who are primarily just in the dealership. You've got a lot of drivers who will be delivering vehicles. They don't need the same service as the people that are in the office. And then you've got people who are out and about traveling, sort of, maybe looking at, potential acquisitions. You've got different profiles of users. Now, if you're an MSP and you want to target, say, car dealerships, getting under the skin, understanding the types of users that customer has, the systems they're using, means that you can build a price point and a service which is an exact fit for their needs, which means if that car dealership ever wants to look at an alternative MSP, nothing will quite look the same because your pricing, everything that you do is tailored to them. Now, the reality is you could have 2 or 3 niches. You don't have to have just one. You could serve other customers. But packaging your service to solve a specific problem for that customer means that you can actually do something which improves your margins, but also means that your customer gets exactly what they need, and they love that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, Justin, what do you actually do to help MSPs?
First thing, it depends on the problem they're trying to solve. For some, they've just haven't raised their prices in years, and they're terrified of doing it, and they think all their customers will leave overnight. And it's really working out with them how we do the price increases in a way that ensures that it's communicated properly. It's all about value, as opposed to apologizing for doing it. And that's quite often a use case I come across with MSPs. And then the other one is helping them to find that unique positioning that enables them to differentiate themselves from everyone else. And it's normally they've grown to a certain size, but they're not sure really how to go much further. And so I work with them to say, well, actually, look, you're brilliant at doing this. And if we look at your customer base, you've got this kind of niche already. Why don't we actually work out how to package your services, look at your tech stack, and actually build something which just says yes, please to those clients and lets you stand out, market differently, and moves the conversation away from price.
Yeah, I love that. And you're absolutely right. All MSPs look the same to the uneducated business owners and managers that are looking for them. And it's really interesting what you say about price increases. Increasingly, I see that there are 2 types of MSP. There are those that they've still got the prices from 2017 because exactly as you said, they're terrified. They think that all the clients will leave them. And then the other side is the MSPs that put the price up every year by X%. And it's almost built into the contract, and it's a completely different mindset. And of course, the ones that put the price up every year, there's just more cash in the business, and of course, when there's more cash, you can grow the business. You can have a better life as the owner because you can take that money, or you can turn it.
It's more fun to run.
It's more fun to run. It's certainly more fun to run when there's more cash in the business. Justin, thank you so much. I feel like you have a lot more to say about this subject, so I think we'll get you back on the show at a future date. Just briefly tell us. You've explained what you do to help MSPs. What's the best way to get in touch with you? Give us your website address and the best way to get in touch.
So value valuealchemists.com is the website, but the best way to get in touch with me is just go straight to LinkedIn, just search for Justin Neale, Justin Neale.
Paul Green's MSP Marketing Edge.